Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
We're recording the show on Friday, which is Juneteenth. I want to talk about Matt Dumba, but we'll start with kind of a general update from Michael Russo. This is the Russo Hockey Show, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Subscribe at your favorite podcast app. That's the best way to listen. Follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod. Check out the new shows like Meatgistics, the Gopher Hole shows, the outdoor shows. And if you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach me at JSOUHAN at TalkNorth.com. Thank you to our sponsors, Profile by Sanford and Tony Hoagland, your State Farm agent. Michael, why don't we just start with a general update? Is there anything new in the hockey world as the NHL approaches a return to play?
I think we're getting closer to the hub cities. That's the big thing today is the Canadian government is essentially going to make an exception for the quarantines to allow the NHL to have one of the hub cities in Canada. So right now, Vegas is the front runner on the U.S. side. And now that story that I wrote last week that said if Canada did not basically make an exception for the league, that Chicago and L.A. would be the front runners to be the second hub on the U.S. side. Now it's back to the other thing that I wrote in that story, that if Canada came through, that the front runners would be Toronto, Edmonton, or Vancouver. Now, what I'm told is that if you have it in the East, obviously it's in Toronto, but they absolutely love Vancouver. I think the players are a little worried about going to Edmonton. The size of the hotels, you'd have to be in multiple hotels. The hotel quality is beyond the JW Edmonton is not great. And also, as I've written in that story, the one thing that the league wants to do is create almost an entertainment complex for these players as well, where you have a lot of room to do things. You can go to different restaurants and things like that. And I think that they're very, very worried that Edmonton would not allow that, where Vancouver might give them more of an opportunity. So anyway, right now it looks like we're getting closer to that point, and then they are just continuing to negotiate the protocols for for phase 3 and phase 4, which is training camp and actual return to play. And we'll see what happens here, because I'm telling you, COVID is spreading. I do think that there have been players and staffers in the league that have tested positive that we might be finding out at some point here, and that could actually obviously inhibit some stuff. So, but right now, I mean, it's all they're continue to work hard behind the scenes, the NHL Players Association and the National Hockey League, to try to make this a go.
No matter how scientific anybody wants to be about any of this stuff, sorry, my phone is going crazy. I'm like Russo, my phone's going off all the time. No matter how scientific anybody wants to be about this stuff, no matter how much you pay attention to experts, it feels like, Michael, we are at a point where pro sports and all sports, we're seeing people test positive, and we're still going to have sports. It's like we've gotten to a point now where it feels like the idea is, okay, some people are going to test positive, you're going to run into some roadblocks, but everybody's going to open up and just make the best of it. Is that oversimplifying?
Yeah, no, I think that is true, but I think the concern is that some of the hotbeds are places where these leagues might be. I mean, right now, Florida is absolutely on fire when it comes to COVID, and the NBA and the Major League Soccer League wants to put a bunch of players in Orlando, and I think the players are very worried about that, rightfully so. Yeah. And so, as you mentioned, these are roadblocks, but because they're not in the hubs yet, these roadblocks could absolutely block this thing from happening. It would almost be more likely to be just something they'd play through if they were already in there and you just had to pull player or a couple players from inside and put them in isolation and things like that. But the goal is again, once you start things up, if all of a sudden a player does contract COVID, that you could just pull them out and not stop the entire thing and derail it like last time. So, I do think that all these leagues, very understandably, you don't have to be a genius to figure out why these leagues want to come back, want to finish these seasons, or in the case of Major League Baseball, actually play the season, which is looking more and more likely. You can see why they want to do it, but this is still a long ways to go, and we'll see if it gets done. The NHL being so far off in this, because again, they're hoping to start training camp in the middle of July and start the season in August. That could either be an inhibitor or help them. Maybe it'll calm things down, but if you take a little more time. But the other thing is it's so far in the distance, a lot of things could happen to just derail things in the next month. And so, the other thing is that if you're going to do a 14-day quarantine for a lot of these guys coming back from Europe and Canada, technically that 14 days backtrack from July 10th, which was the original date of training camp, would have to be June 27th. So a lot of the protocols and the vote needs to happen here really by early next week. And I don't know if they're that close yet. So my guess is it would not be shocking if they actually push back training camp date.
Wow. One philosophical question I keep getting asked whenever I do radio hits or talk to people or just general fans is, if baseball really screws this up and doesn't have a season. Now, I do think baseball will eventually have a season. I think the owners just want to play as few games as possible in the regular season, and that's why they delayed. But if baseball somehow blew it up, didn't have a season, do you think that would benefit hockey? Do you think hockey would capture some casual fans they might not otherwise reach?
Potentially. I do think that that's one big reason why the NHL wants to come back this year is I think that fans that are starving for sports are going to be fascinated by this tournament that's going on in two hub cities with no fans in the crowd and to see what the show is like on television. And so, I think that if you look at the numbers for the golf match between, that with Tiger and Phil and Brady and all that, you look at those numbers, you look at some of the other ratings for some of the other things that have come back. Clearly, non-traditional golf fans or UFC fans are watching these type of television productions, and so and as I've always said, if you get somebody that's never watched hockey before actually tuning in and watching hockey, I think they're going to fall in love with this incredible sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about Dumba and some wild layoffs, and we're going to get to some Twitter questions. Do want to ask you how Profile by Sanford is working for you?
Yeah, it's working outstandingly. Again, it's Friday, so I have my weekly meeting with my coach, Danette. And what we do on that call is go over the challenges that I see for the upcoming week. She helps me with the diet. She helps me with, all sorts of things for everything from psychological blocks to things to really inspire you to just have another good week ahead, and then you can continue on your way and potentially lose more weight. And right now things are going really well for me on the weight loss front. I've lost over 23 pounds now. And Jim, you've known me forever. You see my weight fluctuate, especially during the hockey season. I get into this habit of trying to lose weight in the off seasons. And as I've gotten older, that has become harder and harder. And I got some more bad habits during the quarantine because I just wasn't as active and sitting around my laptop a lot. So I got in touch with Profile by Sanford and I started right away. And the program is developed by doctors and it really takes the guess out of weight loss. And, I follow their activities app. Their food is outstanding. I follow their diet and I just feel constant support. So, really, what are you waiting for? If you're like me and having trouble with your weight or just not feeling great, this is just something awesome. And there's 6 Twin Cities locations. And so for more information, go to profileplan.com and just tell them that Russo sent you.
Tell me about Matt Dumba and his initiative.
Yeah, this guy, he's got a heck of a heart. You just think of all the stuff that he does, from dynamites to the aces to, stopping on the side of the road to helping that couple this year. He's always just somebody that is first to volunteer with anything the Wild need. And obviously, with what's been going on since the George Floyd murder here in the Twin Cities, he's been watching from afar, horrified in Calgary. And he got on board on the Hockey Diversity Alliance that was started with 6 or 7 current and former NHL players. And now he has started a new initiative here in the Twin Cities called Rebuild Minnesota. rebuildminnesota.com. You can go on to donate, and it's to benefit the Lake Street Council to help rebuild Lake Street. And the one thing that Matt was really touched by is being part of ACES and seeing a lot of the low income and underprivileged kids that are part of that group. They live in these communities that were really affected by the at first peaceful protests and throughout peaceful protests, but then there were this, as we all saw watching on TV, the rioting and the looting in these communities. And so I think it really affected him knowing that a lot of the kids that he cares about are living in these communities. So he hopped aboard this with JT Brown, and they've started this benefit to raise money for Lake Street Council. There's also a Canadian side as well to try to spur people in Canada to help donate. And then he's vowed to match $100,000 of the donations. For this, and his brother Kyle, who also does the playlist in the Wild locker room and Wild warm-ups. His brother is a goaltender in Canada and juniors. Created a custom-made Michael Jordan shoe that's going to be given to somebody as well. The first 100 or so people that donate, I think can get a custom-made George Floyd memorial shirt as well. That was also designed by the Dumbas. So I would definitely go to rebuildminnesota.com.
Excellent. One more question for me before we go to Twitter questions. I know the Timberwolves just laid off a lot of people, including some longtime people. Aaron C. Hughes and Dan Bell have been working there forever and do great work and are great people. Remind me, where are the Wild layoffs, and do you expect more?
Yep. I don't know anything about layoffs. I don't know if they've layoffs. Everything that I understand are furloughs, which are obviously temporary leaves of absence. And where you do get full benefits. But obviously this puts a lot of these employees in dire straits, especially as it looks like the $600 extra stipend that comes to people that are either furloughed or laid off or on unemployment. It seems to be stopping at the end of July. So a lot of the employees that maybe don't make a lot of money could be in real dire straits if their work doesn't come back anytime soon. But from what I understand is that they reduced the hours of a number of employees. A number of employees have gotten furloughed, from, I'm sure, account executives to people in game ops to Wild.com people and people like that, people in media relations. So this has affected a lot of people, and that's what the business, when you stop with 20 games left and 6 or 7 home games, and you're having trouble selling tickets. The business is being damaged right now, and now it's affected employees that were employed gainfully here the last 3 or 4 months during this pandemic. About a month and a half ago, the team also furloughed about 10 or 12% of their employees that are really like security people and custodial staff, people that just couldn't do their jobs because XL Energy Center has been dark. And the other thing that I know is that employees making more than $150,000 a year are taking 20% pay cut on the overage over 150. So if you make $200,000, you're essentially losing 20% of 50 and things like that. So obviously, this is affecting a lot of employees with the Minnesota Wild, with the Minnesota Timberwolves. It doesn't look like it's affecting the Vikings or the Twins yet, and I don't know about the United.
I know, yeah. So I just wanted to get an update. I appreciate it. Let's go to some Twitter questions. Do want to thank Tony Hoagland, Hoaglund, your State Farm agent, Champlin. Good times and bad. He has been handling my insurance and Michael Russo's insurance for quite a while.
It's not just a home or a car. It's the 6 months you've saved for the Ultra HD flat screen, just in time for football season. And the overtime you worked for that third car so your team can drive himself to practice. While other insurance companies just see them as a bundle or a combo, State Farm agent Tony Hoagland sees your home and car as things you work really hard for. Tony understands what your things really mean to you and is here to help you give them the protection they deserve. Talk to State Farm agent Tony Hoagland in Champlin for your home and auto insurance today. That's ChamplinInsurance.com.
Also want to thank our longtime producer, Brandon Morton, who's holding this thing together during these times. All our shows are being done remote at this point. We do hope to get back to doing live shows, Tin Shed, maybe some places north of the cities once hockey returns. From Johnson from Wisconsin, why does everyone talk about buying out Dubnyk?
One, it's a cheap buyout. Let me see if I could do two things at once while I talk, which I never can. and look up what the exact buyout is. I'm on Cap Friendly right now. Let's see, buyout calculator. So, and if you remember when Dubnyk signed the contract back at the draft in Florida, they really front-loaded the contract. The first 4 years and the last 2 were cheaper, and a lot of the reasons why the Wild essentially had said at the time when it was Chuck Fletcher was that if it ever got to the point that they needed to buy him out, it would be a super cheap buyout. So if you bought him out right now for the last year of his contract, it would be a $2.66 million contract next year, but then $833 the year after. So it would essentially be a savings of let's see, next year it would be a savings of $1.67 million, and the year after $833, I think. But so that's the big reason. And then the other reason is just his play on the ice. So I think that Wild fans that talk about buying out Dubnyk, they're saying is that the Wild have to go into next season and make sure that their goaltending is improved. And if you can improve the goaltending by have a combination of another goalie and Stalock or Kakinen and Stalock, well, as we've seen many times in Wild history, you can't really it doesn't really benefit anybody having 3 goalies, especially one goalie with a $2.5 million salary and a $4.33 million cap hit. So I think that's the big reason why a lot of Wild fans always ask about potentially Doobie being bought out next year.
Makes sense.
Whenever next year is.
Right. From JP, do you think the Parise to New York Islanders deal may resurface in the offseason?
Again, it's like, what is the offseason? When is the offseason? By the time next season starts, he's significantly older than when Lou Lamoriello wanted to do the deal in February. He's still the Wild's best scorer, goal scorer, statistically. And he had a really quality season for Minnesota. So it's really going to be up to Bill Guerin at the time.
From Ben Wilkie, a very savvy question regarding the CBA and return to play. Is this a situation where the lower paid players will vote to play and outnumber the top 10 to 20% that have less financial motivation to play, or does it not work that way in the NHL?
Yeah, it really doesn't, because these guys, again, they've deferred their last checks of the season so far, and you don't get paid in the playoffs. So, theoretically, you're right. I mean, I think it's more so like maybe the young guys are like, yeah, I want to play, and the veteran guys are like, I want to stay home with the kids. I think it's more that than the financial reasons. But you are right in the standpoint. I will say conversely, when it comes to escrow, it's the more expensive players that are going to get severely hit by escrow because of the damage to the game the next couple years. And so it actually would give them more motivation to try to come back and maybe get some revenue back into the system and shave 6 or 7% maybe off whatever that escrow total is going to end up being. So in a lot of ways, actually, it could be the opposite of your question from that standpoint, from a financial standpoint. From an excitement to play standpoint, the younger guys might want to play more. Like I genuinely felt like Luke Cunnin yesterday when we talked to him is like, I want to play. And to me, it's more just him being a young guy that's early in his career that wants to play. It's not so much financially. Where a lot of the veterans have bemoaned the fact that they've got to play, yet financially they actually have more benefit by actually coming back to play, if that makes sense. Because again, if you play this summer, the only financial benefit a lot of these players are going to get, other than probably some pennies when it comes to playoff bonuses and things like that, because all playoff money is put into a sort of a kitty where then it's divided amongst teams and players depending how far you go. But again, the only benefit that really will come financially for players this summer, because they're not technically getting their paychecks, is that you gain revenue back into the system, even if it's a couple $100 million, and that percentage will come off their escrow that they're eventually going to owe back to the owners. Got it.
By the way, if you'd like to advertise with the network, we're adding another high-profile client next month. You can reach me at jsouhan@talknorth.com. And I'll
give me the scoop.
I can't tell you. Again, we'll put out a press release on it, and maybe we'll do a press conference. We'll see. You have to social distance at the press conference, though.
And people really think I don't know. I know. I really don't know. I'm being left in the
I'll
dark
tell you
here.
later. From Michael Mock, have you heard about the status of the Beauty League? The Beauty League is this year.
Well, I mean, it can't happen this summer because they're going to be trying to come back and play. But I will say, if you want to actually don't do this because I don't want any of these players getting COVID. But if you do want to see players play, they are scattered throughout the Twin Cities right now because again, TRIA is really none of these players are officially inside phase 2. I mean, it's the weirdest thing, and I might be writing a big story on this here in the next couple hours because I've been working on a story really for 4 days that's pretty interesting. But the real interesting thing is phase 2 is that the league and the union have worked incredibly hard on coming up with these intricate protocols for phase 3 and 4 to make sure they come back and to keep these guys healthy. And they came up with a 9,900 word, 22-page document of phase 2 protocols. But then at the end, it was like, P.S., wink, wink, it's voluntary. You don't have to enter phase 2. You can continue doing what you want. And so it's kind of created this Wild West where some teams like Tampa, Pittsburgh, some in Washington, probably Toronto are in phase 2, but yet in other places they've stayed out of phase 2, which means small group activities inside a practice facility that's run by the team where they've got to get tested constantly. And so in Minnesota, one reason why the Wild really haven't opened TRIA yet to these players is because the players are basically saying, first of all, there's only like 4 or 5 Minnesota Wild players still in town. And second of all, even the other NHL-based players here in Minnesota are like, we don't need to go down to TRIA. We'll just continue skating at St. Thomas or Braemar or Dakota or Hope, New Hope or, Blaine or whatever. And so they've continued to do that. And so these players are all skating, all these NHLers and AHLers and even college guys are all skating around Minnesota right now, but they're not always abiding by the social distancing or small groups or things like that. But the league and the union essentially gave these players permission to do that. So back to your Debuty League question, you can't have the Debuty League this summer because these guys are technically in get ready for the season mode. Where the Debuty League might happen is if all of a sudden the Stanley Cup's awarded late September, early October, and then there's a off season between October and say January, and training camp starts in December. I'm just making this all up. But maybe in November, then Octagon will come up and say, hey, we'll do the Debuty League again. But, right now I would say the chances of the Debuty League happening even in a truncated offseason is probably very slim to none. And frankly, if the NHL changes its calendar every year, and now a normal NHL season goes from January to July, August every year, Debuty League forever is going to have to change its actual timing of when you would hold the Debuty League.
Right. A couple more Twitter questions. We're going to make this a tighter show. We have a lot of these questions that you're sending in are really good questions, but they're also pretty timeless. We can get to them next week or the week after. From Steve, do you think any of Adam Beckman, Ivan Ladnia, or Kalen Addison have a good shot at the NHL next season, or are their scoring numbers deceiving us?
Well, I mean, Beckman's definitely going back to juniors. If there's a junior league, right? I mean, they're in the same position. They're in the same position as really all the other leagues on everything's up in the air because of this pandemic. And remember, the Western Hockey League is in 2 countries that they've got to deal with, and Beckman plays in the United States and Washington. And so if Washington continues to be on a downward trend, maybe you can at least play. But right now, Beckman's going back to junior. Ladnia and Addison are expected, I believe, to be in Iowa, but most likely they're going to be in Iowa, right? They're not going to they're going to need to be, if there is an AHL season, right? That's what's like. I hate to throw all these caveats in, but like we're talking like this is like every question I always get is like we're in a normal situation. I mean, if the NHL is not starting on time, what are you doing with the AHL, right? So, but regardless, if this was a normal situation and Beckman's back in junior, Ladnia and Addison are going to need to mature and develop in the minors, not be in the NHL. I mean, just again, a lot of these questions people can answer by themselves. I mean, you ask if he's in the NHL next season, who's he playing over? I mean, if your blue line is Spurgeon, Suter, Dumba, Brodin, Patterson, Hunt, Susie, and then you have Manel and Belpedio that have been in the minors for a while. What's the chances Kalen Addison's playing in the NHL next year? The only way is if the Wild have trade everybody or have devastating injuries. And same thing from a Ladnia standpoint. I mean, the Wild, remember his goal was to make the AHL last year, and they actually sent him back to junior once the season started, which was, a story in itself. So Ivan Ladnia is going to need time in the minors, as good as skilled as he absolutely looks when he's playing in junior.
Ralph Wiggum sent in a really good topic that I think we should get to in a chunky section of a future show about CTA and interviewing enforcers, getting to know enforcers. I don't want to give it short shrift at the end of the show here, so maybe we'll save that topic. Ralph, next time I ask for questions, resend that if you would, to remind me, and we'll try to really get into it. It's a great topic. For today, I'm just going to throw it to Michael for a final thought. Again, thank you to Profile by Sanford. Thank you to Tony Hoagland, Hoaglund. Thank you to our producer, Brandon Morton. Thank you to everyone who has stuck with us and listened to us during this time. We are, we're a small business, and we're fighting to keep things rolling here. Michael, final thought.
I actually, for the first time in 250 episodes of the around that of the Russo Suhan show, I actually have a real final thought. You want to hear it?
That's why I kept asking. I thought one of these years you would have a final thought.
But it's going to be a selfish promo, as a shameless promo, as I'm sure.
So how is that different from the rest of the show?
Yeah, exactly. Read The Athletic this week because June 23rd is the 20-year anniversary of the Minnesota Columbus expansion draft. June 24th is the 20-year anniversary of the Minnesota Columbus first expansion entry draft, NHL draft. And Aaron Portzline, our Columbus Blue Jackets writer, and myself have been working on a couple stories for a while. I just got off. You want to hear something funny? So, Doug Risebrough's not a fan of mine. Doug McLean's not a fan
I've heard that.
Doug McLean's not a fan of Portzline. So the way that we did the story is that I called McLean for the story, and he's calling Risebrough. So
that's awesome.
It's almost hilarious. And then I've talked to the two Tommies, the former assistant GMs. He's calling Donnie Boyd, and we have I just got off the phone with Doug McLean, and man, did he fill the notebook on just great stuff about the expansion draft and the draft. And I think the entry draft story to me, which I'm taking the lead on, to me is a really cool story because it's going to be what if Minnesota had lost the coin flip and Columbus had won the coin flip, meaning Columbus would have taken Marian Gaborik. Who would the Wild have taken, and how would that have set a different path for the first 7, 8, 9, 10 years of the Minnesota Wild and Columbus Blue Jackets organizations? Would Columbus have been the team that went to the conference final their third year? Would the Wild have been years and years of oblivion where it took them years to even make the playoffs, let alone win a playoff round? And so there's just great anecdotes, in a draft that was garbage, one of the worst drafts that I've ever covered, the 2000 draft. Just look at that first round. After the top six, if Justin Williams saved it at some point, and Nick Cronwall, but it was just guys you've never heard of in that draft. But in the expansion draft, it was sort of this fake draft. It was hard for them to manipulate things like Vegas was able to do when they were the only team where Doug and Doug really couldn't make deals, because then teams had to make deals with both GMs. And then the other thing that was weird about the expansion draft is that a lot of these teams took unrestricted free agents, right? And so they were essentially taking dead money off other teams that never ever had intention to sign them. So I'm also going to do my own podcast this week as well. So that's it.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks to Michael. We will talk to you next week.
Pretty little city built on a hillside. Music in the bars and fire in the sky. We went to the beach and it was covered in ice. And I used to call it home. So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive a winner.
I actually, for the first time in 250 episodes of the around that of the Russo Suhan show, I actually have a real final thought. You want to hear it?
Blah blah blah.